moved, doing nothing to help with the problem of, we found that the government itself, the revenue would be increased.
I think the gentleman from Pennsylvania, and yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Swagel, for being here again today with us. To me, one of the key findings from your research is that immigration actually has a really positive effect on our economy. Unfortunately, yesterday, the Secretary Mayorkas was removed, doing nothing to help with the problem of immigrants or the border. But in fact, overall, immigration is a good thing. You found that it looks like that you found that you project that the economy could grow 7 trillion, was it? Yeah, over the next decade. And then also that we found that the government itself, the revenue would be increased, it's estimated, by $1 trillion over the over the next period. So I wonder if you could comment on immigration, why it is a plus for our economy, and what you think comprehensive immigration reform, instead of just taking people out of their office, would actually do something.
Okay, no, thank you. And it's a key finding in our report is the role of immigration in the economy and in the budget. And of course, I recognize there are many aspects to immigration, and CBO, of course, will focus on the economic and budget, but I want to start by acknowledging the security and social aspects and many others. We do find that the labor force is more than 5 million people higher at the end of the 10-year window than we had previously expected, and that's because of the surge of immigration. And as you said, that more workers means more output, more income, and that in turn leads to the higher revenue, the $1 trillion figure that you mentioned.
So really the answer about immigration is that we need the workers, and we would have more workers if we had more immigrants that were in this country. Is that what you're saying? It's the workers.
That's right. And the domestic fertility in the United States, the number of births per woman, has been declining. And there's a sense in which immigration is now offsetting the decline in fertility.
Okay. The other issue I wanted to raise is about tax cuts for the wealthiest. You know, we see in your report that what we knew was true, that the Donald Trump's tax cuts actually drove a big hole in the deficit, and that adding to that, which is what the Republicans have said, would be a real problem. So while we've talked about spending, that somehow it's a problem, and then they always raise, the programs for seniors, for Social Security, that these are too heavy. Aren't we concerned about the issue of creating more deficit because of giving more tax cuts to the wealthy? And I'm just wondering if you think this is a good idea, that we continue to add more tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, for the big corporations, or whether or not we ought to consider trimming that.
Well, our projections are based on current law, and the kinds of changes you're mentioning, additional changes in taxes, lower taxes, would mean a yet higher deficit and a more challenging fiscal trajectory.
So I just want to say that every time it seems on the Republican side of the aisle, when we talk about how are we going to make sure that we don't continue to build deficits, point at the things that make America great, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, taking care of people, ordinary Americans who really need help. So I thank you for what you said, and I yield back. That you found that you project actually has a really positive effect on our economy. Unfortunately, with us, to me, one of the key, it's estimated by $1 trillion over, yesterday, the Secretary Mayorkas was